This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 394, Selling Insight, with Stephen Timme and Melody Astley.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers, and it's October 12th, and fall is well on its way here in Illinois. The leaves are falling, just like the episodes here at Sales Babble as they tick away. Can you believe it? I've published 394 episodes. Wow. It's been 7 years. Over 7 years. I can't believe I've come this far. Absolutely blows me away. Like I said last week, on October 26th, and that's only 2 weeks from today, it's a Tuesday, I'll be making the most monumental announcement I've ever made here on Sales Babble. I have a lot to share. Very excited about this announcement and can't wait to tell you. There's just a couple more things I need to put in place before we can go public. Stay tuned, follow me on LinkedIn, and you'll be the first to hear. But that day's not here yet. Instead, today we've got Stephen Timme and Melody Astley. And today they talk about the importance of you understanding how executives think. That instead of pitching the features and benefits of your solution, it's better to understand what are the key performance indicators that matter to them and how to shape your product, your solution within that context. And so, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Stephen. Welcome, Melody. Are you ready to babble?
We are ready to babble.
We're ready to babble.
Awesome. You guys have a new book out called The Insight LED Selling. I'm assuming this is a book about selling light-emitting diodes, right?
Oh, exactly. LED.
Exactly not.
The first time I read it, I was thinking, "Oh, it's a very niche book. Oh, it's a very
Well, we do try to illuminate people about all these new concepts, but it's the best one I could come up with.
But it's really called Insight-Led Selling: How to Adopt Executive Mindset to Build Credibility and Communicate with Impact.
That's right.
Why are you guys the right guys and gals to write this book?
Melody, you want to take that one, and then I'll fill in the gaps?
Well, for one, we've been doing this a long time, and that is working with sales organizations from some of the largest technology and other sales organizations in the world. Stephen for the better part of 25 years, me for the better part of for almost 10 years. And along the way, you learn a lot of things, and you see the sales transformation happen right before your eyes. You see sellers start off on the journey, and they're intimidated by numbers, or they're intimidated by the executives their leaders are asking them to call on, and they don't know how to have that conversation. They know their product, they know how to talk to feature and function, but they don't know how to elevate that conversation, which is grounded in finances and P&Ls, and how are these executives paid, and how are they measured, and what do they care about? And so when you see this transformation, it's validating and rewarding, for one. Two, they come back for more. And three, they say, Mel and Stephen, why don't you put this down in a book? Why don't you have a handbook that captures all of these lessons that you've been talking about for the past 20 years? And so we did it.
Yeah, and to add to Melody, she forgot to add that she it's quite an extensive sales background. So it's just like someone saying, here's what I think you ought to do. Melody's been there, done that. And really just to add to why us is, as you said, we've been doing this a long time, working with sales organizations, but where a lot of this really came from in a former life, I was a professor of finance at Emory University here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live, and some other universities. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do quite a bit of consulting, working for a number of Fortune 500 companies. And most of the times it was through the CFO's office or finance office, but a lot of it was done in the operations side of the business, or it was done through product development. So I really saw how they looked at these problems. I really saw how they said, look, we're trying to grow the business, and here's the 3 or 4 things we're going to do, or we're trying to improve efficiency, and here's the way we're going to think about this. And so just by pure luck, I was doing a workshop at Georgia Tech, also here in Atlanta, go Jackets, and someone that worked for a software company came up and said, have you ever applied this to sales? And I said, no. And I said, but it sounds good, because if this is how companies make decisions internally, why wouldn't people, selling at the enterprise level not adopt the same way of doing it? So that's where another reason why this is not just based upon something that Melanie and I cooked up, but it's really based upon best practices and a lot of these companies that sellers are trying to sell to.
Yeah. The big insight I kind of got out of the book, I think that you're trying to share, is that sellers are not buyer focused enough.
That's true.
That they
Right.
don't know their industries that well and the struggles that their customers have. Is that about right?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You have that dynamic, and then you add into the way, not only had they not really thought about their customers' mindset, but the buying journey has changed pretty significantly over the past 5-7 years with the SaaS-based economy. The buyers are more educated than ever. There are more stakeholders than ever, and each one of those stakeholders has a different thing that he or she values. So how does the seller not only understand this new kind of buying journey, but understands how each stakeholder is positioned within that journey?
Yeah, and Pat, so study after study shows that when they survey executive buyers, it's an astounding number. It's over 70% say, I don't think these sellers know my business. And they don't, which is really sad. We've done similar type surveys, and even the sellers will say, well, even if I know the customer's goals, I don't know how to align our solutions with those goals. So that's that's all the negative stuff, but it's really not as hard as people think. And that's why Melanie and I are very passionate about saying, we're tired of all the negative numbers. We have a lot of friends in sales. There are a lot of smart people in sales, and with the right framework and dedication and commitment by the sales organization, just not the individual seller, they can do it. They can separate themselves from that other 70%.
The thing is, I think the challenge here for the seller is that their expertise is in their industry, not in their client's industry. And the other challenge is companies aren't very interested. We talk about executives to have their sales professionals actually learn a lot about that other industry. They're more interested in them like banging on the phone or setting up appointments and all that kind of thing. And they kind of get lazy about this, in my experience. And I'm only got to hire people, sales professionals who've already been in the industry, which is kind of tough when you have all these non-competes that people are signing. So it just sets up this situation of a whole lot of ignorant people all kind of fumbling on how to buy.
Well,
am I rambling here?
No. It's an interesting dynamic, Pat. It is, and it is one that we've seen the sales organizations that don't take into account how their buyers are buying, and push the product first, or expect the sellers to be solely technology experts. They will lag relative to their competitors, again, because this buying landscape is changing. And by the way, you mentioned NDAs being an inhibitor to hiring people with deep industry expertise. Not only that, it's cost prohibitive to do that. So if you can enable a sales force to understand just the basics around the industry and how the language of banking is a little bit different than the language of manufacturing, is a little bit different than the language of healthcare, it's baby steps. And when you're talking about those and using those words and the KPIs that are common to that industry, it does add a level of curiosity and credibility that sellers wouldn't otherwise have, and it's easy to do. You just have to do it.
Yeah, and Pat, one of the unique things about the book is we interviewed around a dozen executives and asked them, what do you expect from sellers? And all of them said, well, I expect them to have a working knowledge of my industry, but I don't expect them to be industry experts because they're just, they've got their own industry experts. Or, one of the things that we've seen is more and more sales organizations are having available to the sellers industry experts. But as Melody said, it's kind of, you need to have a working knowledge. But one of the things about the industry knowledge that repeatedly these executives said is they said, tell me something I don't know. And at first, we kind of pushed back on that. Like, come on, you got to be kidding me. You got this big staff and you got consultants. What do you mean? Tell me something I don't know. And their point was, a lot of these sellers are talking to so many different companies in an industry, and not to give away anything confidential, but say, okay, so we're going through this digital transformation. Hey, tell us what's the 2 or 3 potholes. What can happen to accelerate this? So I don't think most executive buyers expect someone to have this deep industry knowledge. But as Melody said, at least speak my language, right? Don't be using manufacturing terms. For example, an acquaintance of mine that's in wholesale distribution, supply chain, this person comes in and starts using manufacturing terms. And he said it was a very short meeting. So you don't have to be an industry expert. You have to have a working knowledge of it, know what are some of the key, initiatives in the industry and how the industry works, but not 20 years experience. It's just not realistic.
I'm reminded of, like, in the book, The Challenger Sale, they have this whole idea that you need to, like, push back on when people give you objections about when buyers give you objections about one thing or another. And the idea is that you push back because you actually have some keen insight that they don't know. Right? That kind of goes to what you said, Stephen, right? Tell me something I don't know.
Yep.
But that's not easily done, though. It's hard for sellers to do that when they're kept in little boxes.
Well, that's where grabbing a quick insight and applying it to the customer is really easy. You just have to do it. And that is to say, we work with what we don't do. Let me say, we are not a sales methodology. So as a result of that, we work with lots of clients who have adopted all kinds of methodologies from name it, but to include Challenger. And one of the things our Challenger clients tell us is, I struggle, like you said, I struggle to come up with something to challenge them with or tell them something they didn't know. Well, if you can attribute value to a KPI that your solution impacts, and you can do it specifically in that customer's context, and you can do it quickly and easily and confidently, that is telling them something that they didn't know, and it's creating a sense of urgency, and it's establishing an opportunity cost that will make them act more quickly and show you the respect because you've earned that curiosity.
And this, Pat, to follow up on that, this is why to do this effectively, and not just what we're talking about, the Challenger or all those other ones, is it's a team sport. It can't be an individual salesperson. It's okay, I'm going to create our industry playbook. I'm going to go out and find out what are the key, initiatives and KPIs in the industry. It really is a team sport involving, marketing, product management, sales, all those pieces. But the good news is once they have made that investment, it's very, very scalable. And people could be saying, well, wait a minute, we don't want to spend a lot of time doing this. Well, guess what? That's why a lot of sellers, are making just over 50% of their quota. So it's worth the investment to do this, but it's not on an individual seller. There's got to be a commitment by the company itself in terms of, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to understand the industry. We're going to understand from our buyer's perspective how our solutions create value, not how we think it creates value, but it's really from the buyer. No, that's a good point. Pat, I see this all the time. Is we'll work with companies and, okay, what's your value proposition? And it's all from the outside in. Well, here's how we create value for our customers. Gee, have you talked to the customers? How do they see their value created? It might be a little different, and a lot of times it is, which is good. It should be very, very buyer-centric.
Something I often hear is because sellers are constantly talking to lots of people, they actually have an insight that hardly anybody has in the industry. They're taking the temperature of many companies. These people may have a revenue issue. These people may have a profit issue. These people may have a cost overrun or quality or time. Time to market thing, right? And there is an opportunity, but oftentimes companies don't even listen to their own salespeople, right? They let the marketing department just kind of runs things. The product development department run things.
Well, that's a whole different story. But no, you're right. And as an example, Candy Conway was one of the executives that we interviewed, and she's the former senior VP of operations for global operations for AT&T. And I said, "Come on, Candy, you had this huge staff, you had all these consultants. What are you saying about what do you expect from sellers?" And the point was, she goes, "They talk to so many different companies in our industry. They see things that I don't." She said, "Look, I'm very, very senior, but my head's down. I'm very focused on, what's happening right now." So, I mean, again, we heard this time and time again. Share with me what you've seen in the industry. It may just confirm some things I've seen or I'm thinking about. It may be something I didn't know about. But there's a lot of knowledge out there that's really not leveraged, and it should be.
That's a good point. That's a really good point. That's a really good point. So I really love what you're saying here about that management needs to get on board, that they need to invest, right?
Correct. Yeah, it just has to be committed. You cannot ask an individual seller to do this or a region to do this or whatever it might be. I mean, come on. There's too many resources available within a lot of these companies that they can do this. And that's one of the things we do in the book is we provide this framework. We just don't tell you, hey, go learn about your industry. We said, look, here's a framework for learning about your industries, right? And then when we talk, as Melody referenced earlier, there's more buyers out there than ever. I mean, Gartner estimates now for, the larger deals, there's, 10 plus stakeholders. And the example I like to give is like, so I'm a retailer. I'm going to expand revenues by doing a better job around omni-channel. Well, all of a sudden you've got merchandising involved, you got marketing involved, you got store operations involved, you got logistics involved. So, you need to be able to communicate with those different buyers in their language and focus on the operational KPIs. For example, distribution and logistics in this example is going to be, okay, how do we get the product? How do we make deliveries within 24 hours, right? Where, merchandising is going to be, what's our sell-through rate? So the point being is you can't ask an individual seller to say, okay, now do I not only know the industry, I know the speak of the different buyers in those industry. But once companies take the time to do this, and we provide a framework for doing this, it's very, very scalable across a lot of different customers.
Maybe what are 4 or 5 points in this framework that you can maybe share with the audience?
Well, from the industry perspective, the couple of things. One is like, hey, find out what are their primary goals and their strategies. Right now, everyone's trying from a goal perspective, saying, I want to grow revenues, I want to better manage costs, but then peel that back further and say, oh, well, how are they, growing revenues? Well, they're doing that by making more personalized offers, by having greater customer insights. And well, how are they, better managing, operational costs? Well, there's a lot more AI, or for example, they have connected factories, whatever it is. And that stuff's out there in the public domain. So first of all, what's going on in the industry? Second thing is, and of course, being a finance type, I got to bring this in. There's all kinds of financial metrics out there. I mean, I could bore you for hours going through all these financial metrics. Well, guess what? In every industry, there's 2, 3, at most 4 areas of performance that executives focus on. It creates 80, 90% of the value. Well, okay, here's a framework for mapping those metrics to your solutions. And then another aspect of it is, well, here's the major buyers. Pat's in distribution logistics, Melly's in marketing, and Steven's the finance type. Well, even though we're aligned with the same goal, how do you align your solutions with those? So that's another aspect of it. And then a fourth one would be, well, give me some insights into how much value your solution might create for me. And initially what we start off with a thing called a power of one. Well, what if Pat, he's in distribution and logistics. Well, what if you could, using some industry averages, say, well, Pat, we're guesstimating a 1% improvement is worth this much. Or Melody, Melody would guesstimate a 1% improvement in, campaign response rates worth this much. So it's really starting at a very high level, get it to the level where you're quickly focusing on potential financial benefits. And then from there, you can move into business cases and those type of things. Melody, what do you want to add to that? I felt like I talked too much.
I mean, that is the perfect walkthrough of an example of the framework in the book. It's a 7-step process. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You do those and you put together an industry point of view quickly, easily, and one that you wouldn't have had before. So you covered it.
Thank you.
I like it. It's succinct.
It is, right.
Yeah, and the book's not too long. And Pat, for very good reason, is I don't like to read all that much. I like to listen. So I'm like, okay, we're writing the book. It's like, oh, come on. We got to make this shorter. I can't take it anymore. Even though it was Melody and Meyer stuff.
Yeah, flipping through the book too, I saw you have a bunch of models, that you, which I thought had a lot of value. Like, how well does your sales force know your customers? And I like how you build these so that people can kind of see how the whole structure works. I'm looking at one right here on profitability, revenue growth, and asset utilization. Yeah, these are good models. And so my guess is if a seller had this up in front of them, it would stimulate questions.
I would hope so. And what we also did, Pat, is, we don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel. We've already done a lot of it, right? So, you buy the book. We've got some templates you can download that says, okay, here's a framework for talking to different buyers, or here's a framework for aligning your solutions to different industry goals. So, because we want people to go apply this, do we want them to buy the book? And well, yeah, we do want them to buy a book because we know we're going to make tons of money in royalties, right? Melody and I are already out looking at new cars because of this. Not, but yeah, we want people to go use this stuff. Because like I said, we're sick of hearing all the negative stuff. Sellers this, sellers that. They don't understand the customer. Well, we're putting an end to that working with our sales friends.
So you could give our listeners a piece of advice they could take action on this week. What would that be?
For me, it would be get started. It is the journey of 1,000 steps starts with one little baby step. And so if you have a preconceived notion or just an historical discomfort with the language of business and how numbers flow in and out of the organization, I strongly encourage you to look to alleviate that, to get over that, because it will be limiting at a certain point, because the buyers need to understand that that language, and this is how they speak, this is how they're measured, this is how they set their goals. It's just so critically important. And it is not hard. That is the big takeaway. It is not hard. You just have to get started, and these frameworks are a very unintimidating way to get started and help you build the confidence, because it does back up to a solid point of view.
Yeah, and mine would be to get started is first pick a common industry goal, right? People are in retail. People are trying to grow revenues by doing a better job around omni-channels. Okay, everyone understand that goal? Does everyone understand what that means? Start talking about, well, how do our solutions help enable that goal? Pick one goal. There could be 5 in the industry. Pick one that you can influence. And then as a part of that, pick one area of financial performance. It could be helping them grow revenues. It could be helping them better manage costs, whatever it might be. Just pick one. Even if you can impact every area of financial performance in that industry, pick one and get down your how story. Because one thing I learned years ago, I was working with Tom Shoey. He was fortunate enough to work with Tom Shoey. He was the CFO at Walmart. And he taught me, Stephen, first tell me how, and then tell me how much. So I'm telling you, as a finance person, as much as I'd love for you to start spitting out a bunch of numbers, find the goals, find the one area of financial performance that you can impact, and really get down your elevator speech, I guess now your Zoom speech or whatever it might be. Tell me how, as a buyer, tell me how you're going to help me improve that, and then get into the numbers later. That's my suggestions for getting started.
Awesome. If people want to connect with you guys, what's the best way of doing that?
Any of the channels. So you can find us on Twitter, Finlistic Solutions, Facebook, LinkedIn. And that's in our website, of course, finlistics.com, or if you had a specific question, info@finlistics.com to send us a note.
And I'll note, Pat, that we on LinkedIn, on the website, and again, you remember my background. I was a professor, so I still got this knowledge should be free mindset. But on LinkedIn and the website, we have a lot of really good practical education there that go out and apply it. That we want people to get started on this. But as Melody said, the normal channels and info@finlistics.com.
Right, and I'm assuming the book's on your website and also on Amazon.
Website and Amazon and insight-led-selling.com. We've got a website for that too, which is worth mentioning. If you do buy the ebook, you still have access to all of these templates. There's a passcode within the book that you can just go to our website, put in the passcode, and download all of the frameworks that are in the hard book. So that way, you're not limiting your experience and can still use everything.
Yeah, and even with the hard copy book, is that you can still download those templates and go start filling them in. Put your information in there.
Cool. Well, guys, thanks a lot for visiting us here on Sales Babble. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, Pat, we've enjoyed babbling with you.
We have.
Babylon.
Babylon we have, yeah.
Cool.
If you go to the show notes at www.salesbabble.com, I've got links to Stephen and Melody's LinkedIn, plus their company, Finlistics, and of course the book, which is on Amazon. If you got any questions how to sell SaaS and how to do the enterprise sale, how to work a room, how to make sure all the stakeholders all get corralled in the right direction, reach out and contact me. Go to the home page of Sales Babble and click the Babble Me button, and that'll send a message directly to me. Or, of course, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and send me a message. Love to hear from you. If you could share this episode with a colleague, that would be awesome. Somebody else who's looking to grow their sales skills, you'd be doing me a personal favor. I would really appreciate it. That's all I've got for this week. Until next week, take care and have a highly successful and a profitable selling day.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.
This is a production of Habanero Media.